Welcome. Today we're here to discuss the upcoming season of the Waterloo Cedar Falls Symphony Orchestra. Today we have Jason Weinberger, the Pauline Barrett Artistic Director and Conductor of the Waterloo Cedar Falls Symphony, and Jim Miller, who's the Co-Executive Director. Jason, this past season was a huge success, and I hear we have a very exciting season ahead. Would you tell us a little bit about that? That starts on September 7th?
Absolutely, yeah. We had a great year this past season. Wonderful programs, great artists, and we had better attendance than we've had in quite a few years. We're very excited about everything that went on. So we wanted not only to duplicate that, but sort of enlarge that and extend the excitement that we've seen around the symphony concerts in the last year or two. So we do kick off our season here just coming up around the corner, September 7th, with a group called Project Trio. Absolutely fabulous trio. They are somewhat in the standard classical mold, but somewhat not. In fact, their flutist is world famous now for his YouTube videos where he beatboxes with his flute. And they incorporate this type of technique into their music making. A lot of jazz, a lot of fun in the music making. And so I think folks are going to really enjoy the variety they bring to this concert. They're playing a piece written for them, and we're one of the first orchestras in the country to perform it. And they're also playing several works that they've written for themselves that draw on, let's just say, well-known classical themes with a twist. So we're very excited to have Project Trio back with us, and we're going to pair their half of the concert with Copeland's Appalachian Spring. So that's what kicks off our season before we roll into the fall concerts.
What do you have scheduled in the fall?
Well, we have a few of our special Lollipop programs. Those are free concerts for the youngest kids, and those are going to be happening in September on the 23rd and in October on the 14th, featuring some jazz, featuring some marimbas, really exciting, colorful music for kids. And then we return with a program which is also good for the whole family, featuring the full orchestra. And that is going to be a really spooky and we think fun Halloween celebration with Gary Kelly. We'll be having another segment that we'll be talking a little bit more about that, and hearing from Gary. Very excited, though, to play some of this very spooky music. Folks may recognize the opening tune on that program. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, the Bach Toccata and Fugue in D minor. That'll be featured along with some other well-known music, and Gary's going to be illustrating this wonderful night music by Mahler, which is something that we'll discuss in the other segment with Gary. Then we go into November with a few other events that feature different parts of the orchestra. So in mid-November, we're going to be at the Brown Derby over in Waterloo. Wonderful space, very intimate. The audience sits all around the ensemble, very close to the musicians. And we'll be featuring our woodwind section over there, playing party music from the 18th century. So we're going to party like it's 1785. And play some great music by Mozart and his contemporaries. And then we'll feature our brass musicians at the very end of November on our Cedar Valley Christmas concert, which is a collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club. So really exciting to have the different sections of the orchestra highlighted. Towards the end of the year, we'll hear more from the strings, but to have the winds in November, earlier in the month, and then later on the brass as part of the Cedar Valley Christmas program. And that will take us right into the holidays.
Well, it sounds like there's a little something for everybody. Jim, I understand there's some new faces in the symphony office. Can you tell us who they are?
There are. We have a number of new people in the last year to a year and a half, including myself. So Kathy Duke and I are the co-executive directors beginning this year. And I'm in the office a good share of the day each day with Grace Miller. Folks ask, but no relation to me. And Grace is our operations manager. We have Matthew Coley, who is our production manager. And we have Nathan Stuckey, who is our musicians personnel manager. And then we also have Rachel Lowry, and she's our librarian, takes care of all of the music for us. And last but not least is Jack Dunning, and he's our education intern.
Great. Jason, I know you and members of the orchestra are busy throughout the year in the Cedar Valley community by doing educational outreach programs. Can you tell us a little about those?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is an area that is really one of the core focuses of the symphony. the work we do educationally, and this really stretches across all ages. I mean, this is youth who are attending their very first concerts, and a little bit earlier I mentioned the Lollipop concerts. Those are free shows for kids who are just coming to their first concert, never really sat in an audience before and heard music, and the magic of that experience is something that we specialize in those concerts. And all the way up to programs where adults continue to learn more and deepen their relationship with classical music. So there's a real wide spectrum of activities that go on. I think in every one of our concert series and across all of our activity, you'll see some of this educational work going on, really trying to make classical music accessible and exciting to audiences, particularly young audiences who may be new to it. You know, on our regular concert series, we actually have a number of events like that. The Christmas time screening of The Snowman is going to be one such concert. The full orchestra will play the soundtrack to the Snowman film. And kids will even get to try instruments beforehand out in the lobby. So our regular concert series has some of this activity, but then there's a whole host of educational work that goes on beyond sight of the general community. It happens in schools, at daycare centers, at various events with different organizations like the Boys and Girls Club or Tri-County Head Start. So there's lots happening there, and I'll quickly summarize what we do, because I think people will be surprised and probably pretty delighted to hear about this activity that's happening, musical activity that's happening with young people. So I mentioned our Lollipop concerts. Those are accompanied by our instrument petting zoo. And you know our instrument petting zoo well. I believe you spent some time with it yourself.
Yes, I did.
As a volunteer, of course, with the orchestra, helping us bring this whole sort of rehearsal room full of instruments for kids to be able to actually put their hands on and try. And it's wonderful. You have the 3, 4, 5-year-old kids come in and make a sound on the trumpet, and you just see their eyes light up, and they're so excited. They can't believe they've done it. And they have that real, first real visceral connection to making music and making sound with an instrument. So the petting zoo appears at all of our Lollipops concerts, at a couple of our full orchestra concerts like the Snowman, and then it will also appear at schools and daycare centers. It does appear at many of our partner organizations, and we also like to get it out to things like the Farmers Market and the College Hill Arts Festival, you know, just places where people are generally hanging out and enjoying the culture, and then we get them a chance to try the instruments. We also bring music directly to schools and also some homeschool groups throughout the Cedar Valley, and we do this in a couple different ways. The main arm of that activity is our Ensembles in the Schools program. And this year is a very exciting year for us with respect to this program. Traditionally, we've had a small ensemble from each section of the orchestra: string quartet, woodwind quintet, brass quintet, small maybe percussion quartet. And these groups will go to the schools and present a program. And those are wonderful programs. I mean, these groups have been doing them for years, and they do a great job, and we always really evaluate what we're trying to focus on for the kids in terms of that introduction. But this year, for the first time that I'm aware of in our history, we're going to be bringing large, full ensembles out into the schools. And so in November and December, we have a 12-piece brass choir that's going to be in a whole bunch of the schools. They're going to hear music from across the centuries, going all the way back to 16th century Venice and all the way up to 21st century America. It's going to be a great journey with the brass. We have our entire woodwind section heading into the schools. They're also going to be out in the fall. And then very exciting for us in the spring, our Ensembles in the Schools program is going to revolve around our harpsichord. And we'll be bringing some Baroque music. That's going to be something very new for a lot of these students. So we're very excited about that. I'll also be visiting quite a few schools this coming year, and that's part of our run-up to our youth concerts. And that's a program that reaches nearly all 4th and 5th graders here throughout the Cedar Valley, both in the Waterloo and Cedar Falls school systems, but also reaching communities like Hudson, Waverly, and even some of the smaller outlying communities. This is a wonderful program, serves about 4,000 students and their teachers every year. And I get to see about 1,000 of them in their schools. So there's a wonderful mix of being in the schools with students through Ensembles in the Schools and through my visits, and then also to be able to bring kids to concerts like our Lollipops and especially these youth concerts. And this year we're excited about the youth concerts. We're going to be highlighting the work of Leonard Bernstein, great American musician, and we're using his young people's concerts, which influenced generations of folks, and I know a lot of people in my parents' generation grew up adoring those on TV. We're going to emulate that and sort of create a 21st century version of that for kids. So the education programs are quite diverse, and about in total every year we're reaching 8,000 to 9,000 young people directly through these programs. And of course then we've got pre-concert talks and other things that happen in the community for, let's say, folks who are young at heart, but may not be young in years anymore. And those are also really wonderful opportunities to connect people with music and to really enrich their lives. And so this looks to be a very exciting year for our education programs, and we're thrilled to be continuing this work. I did want to mention, while we've got the opportunity, we've had wonderful support for our education programs. Some of the funding comes through some of the grant money that comes to us from the state through the Department of Cultural Affairs, but quite a bit is from foundations right here in the community, like the McElroy Trust and the Guernsey Foundation. We're just so grateful for those organizations for helping us out. And we also really rely on the volunteer support of our Upbeat network. And we'll be hearing a little bit about that moving forward, but we also want to thank, of course, all the volunteers who make all of this possible.
Well, Jim, that's a good segue. Can you tell us a little about the Upbeat program?
Sure. In the past, that was the Friends of the Symphony, and we've kind of renamed that in the last few years to our Upbeat group. And those are folks that contribute to the symphony. They have a small membership fee each year, and for that they receive a emailed newsletter or a hard copy newsletter. They get all of the updates. They participate in other ways. They have some other perks. But as Jason mentioned, we're so thankful for that group. They also help offset some of our other costs for concerts and those types of things. So just a wonderful group.
And aren't there ways that Upbeat members can become involved as volunteers?
They can be volunteers, and they can volunteer 1 hour a year or as much or as little as they want. They could pick a concert that perhaps they were interested in, that they wanted to help behind the scenes a little bit, or to maybe with the petting zoo if they want to be there sometime. There's so many ways that people can volunteer, and it's not a huge commitment. We just need a lot of volunteers to do everything that we do.
Okay. I understand the symphony, you're offering special deals for school groups that come?
Special, we're doing some group things, and right now we have worked already this summer with the Suzuki program. We're working with the School of Music, but particularly the Northeast Iowa band directors, orchestra, and choir directors, we have group incentives for them, and we're hoping they can bring the students, all students, whether they're UNI or Hawkeye or whether they're Waterloo, Cedar Falls, all the school systems, the kids get in for a very low rate, but we're doing some group things with the parents, the adults that might accompany them, or the band directors, orchestra directors, and so we're working very closely, and we hope that they bring groups of students to see our concerts this year.
I'm going to piggyback on what Jim said there, Brad, and add that in our season we often get to collaborate with youth groups, youth performing groups, and this is one of the things I really enjoy. Everywhere I've gone, I've had a chance to work with professionals alongside young people, and to me that's really exciting. I remember when I was a kid, that's kind of how I figured out what I wanted to do. But later in the year, Jim had mentioned working closely with band directors, band and orchestra and chorus directors associations, and trying to make sure they have opportunities to encourage students to hear the orchestra and hear the repertoire. In April, we're going to be collaborating side by side with a number of local youth performing groups. We're really excited about this. This is another concert that looks at the legacy of Leonard Bernstein. And the Northern Iowa Youth Orchestra is going to be joining us for that. It's a group I used to direct, and it'd be fun to have them back on stage with us. And the Northern Iowa Children's Choir, which is based at UNI, will also be joining us for that program. So we're really excited to be able to highlight the work that these groups and their directors are doing, but also really bring those kids on stage alongside us and give them this incredible performing experience, give them some more perspective on what they're doing, and hopefully also a transformative encounter, in this case with the music of Leonard Bernstein. So I think that dovetails really nicely with some of the outreach that we're doing in terms of getting students interested in coming to concerts.
Well, that sounds like an absolutely wonderful opportunity for those students, something that can literally change lives. Jim, can you tell us how to get tickets for this upcoming season?
Sure. We're housed in the Gallagher Blue Dorn. We're not actually a part of the Gallagher Blue Dorn, but we're housed there, and many of our concerts are there. But we also network with not only Steve Kerrigan and the Gallagher Blue Dorn, but also with Unitix and the box office there. So folks can come in and purchase their tickets right there, look on screen at Unitix at the ticket windows, or they can get on our website, WCF Symphony. Any social media where you type that in, you'll find us. You can purchase tickets there. Or you can call our office if you have questions, that 273-3373, and talk to Grace.
Well, to wrap up, Jason, can you tell us a little about the spring concerts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned a couple of them, and I'll highlight some of the things that are going on. You know, before we truly get to spring, but hopefully we'll be getting close to spring in February. We'll be back at the Brown Derby in Waterloo, this wonderful intimate venue, and we're going to showcase our harpsichord there. A lot of the same repertoire that we're bringing to the schools at that time is going to be featured on that program. 4 virtuoso concertos featuring members of the orchestra, including myself, so I've got some practicing to do. Then as we move into the spring, we'll be celebrating Leonard Bernstein's legacy in April, and I mentioned we've got a couple shows where we do that, our youth concerts, and of course that big concert featuring the Northern Iowa Youth Orchestra, as well as the Children's Choir. And then in May, we've got a really fun program. It's called the Hungarian Project, and we're going to be looking at music of Hungary, both music by Hungarian composers, as well as how Hungarian folk music has played into classical music more generally. And our guest artist for that is an absolutely fabulous violinist from Budapest, who runs a chamber orchestra there. And he is going to bring not only his playing to the orchestra, but he'll be mentoring the string players and really, in a way, teaching them quite a bit about this particular Central European way of playing the string instruments, and especially bringing that Hungarian folk music flair to this music. So it's going to be just an exotic, wonderful concert. And we'll wrap up our regular season at the Gallagher. And then what I'm telling people at this point is to put their ears to the ground, because I have a feeling once the weather gets warm next summer, we'll be back out again at the River Loop doing some more of the music that people enjoyed this last year.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that July 1st concert at the Gallagher, or excuse me, at the River Loop. And the crowd is incredible. I would love to see that happen again. Was that something that was just new this year?
That was something that was new this year. We received funding from City of Waterloo to help make that event happen. And it was something the mayor had wanted to do over there, and everybody got behind it. And lo and behold, there we are playing under the stars right before the fireworks on July 4th weekend. I'd love to see that be an annual event. And as people heard, the music is fabulous. You know, it's interesting for us, too, to be able to perform in all these venues. We perform about half our shows at Gallagher, and Jim mentioned we're in residence there. But we perform at the Brown Derby, at the River Loop, obviously in the schools. We're always looking for more venues. In fact, one of our lollipops will be at the Cedar Falls Community Center this year. So always trying to extend ourselves and find new places for people to encounter the symphony. And I think that's something that people can count on experiencing as we go ahead.
Well, I'm really excited about this upcoming season, and I hope everyone who sees this program will agree. I'd like to thank our panel guests today, Jason Weinberger and Jim Miller, and I hope to see all of you at the concerts this fall and next spring.